Howdy, friend. Welcome back to Feed Bandit, the Texas First Outdoors podcast. Spitz here, helping out my fellow bandits with this episode. As always, my flawed yet fun human hunting partners, either Jimmy or Richard, have edited the contents of this one, so you can rest assured it ain't slop. It's just here to educate and entertain. And if you disagree with anything, hell, just blame it on Jimmy, the least seasoned outdoorsman and entertainer of the two. Let's get to it. If you have ever stood on the edge of a grain field down in the Rio Grande Valley, or sat on a back porch in the middle of a bustling Texas city like San Antonio, Austin, or Waco during the warm days of late summer, you have probably heard a very specific deep call echoing out of the trees. It sounds a whole lot like a soft, cooing voice asking, "Who cooks for you?" You look up into the high branches of a live oak or a pecan tree and see a heavy, chunky gray bird with a bright blue ring around its eye and a broad, striking white bar running right along the edge of its wing. I am talking about the white-winged dove. To any Texian wing shooter or wildlife lover, the white-winged dove is an absolute legend of the outdoors. They are bigger than mourning doves. They fly in massive, noisy flocks, and when they cross a field, they move with a steady, powerful wing beat that makes them look like mini fighter jets cruising across the horizon. But if you talk to some of the older land managers and game wardens who remember what Texas looked like 50 or 60 years ago, they will tell you a wild story. There was a time when the white-winged dove was in serious trouble down here, facing massive population drops that almost wiped them out of our state entirely. Today, however, the white-winged dove is enjoying one of the greatest biological comeback stories in the history of North American wildlife conservation. We are seeing millions upon millions of these magnificent birds expanding their range further north every single year, filling up our grain fields, city parks, and rural pastures. Today, we are going to dive deep into the fascinating history, population trends, and conservation efforts surrounding the white-winged dove. We will look at how human land changes almost destroyed them, the genius ways these birds adapted to survive, and the exact step-by-step technical tips you need on your land to support healthy, thriving white-winged flocks. So pull up a chair, grab a beer if you can, and let's talk about the white-wing. To truly understand where the white-winged dove stands today, you have to take a quick trip back in time to the early 1900s. Originally, the white-winged dove was almost exclusively a subtropical bird down in Texas. Over 90% of the entire state's white-winged population lived in a very small area known as the lower Rio Grande Valley, right along the border with Mexico. Back then, the valley was covered in massive, thick forests of native brush, trees like ebony, mesquite, and granjeno, alongside huge citrus groves filled with sweet orange and grapefruit trees. The white-wings absolutely loved those dense citrus trees and native brush thickets. They would build millions of nests jammed close together in giant breeding colonies, filling the air with their calls. But as the 20th century moved along, Texas began to grow fast. Agriculture boomed, and vast stretches of that native brush were bulldozed and cleared away to make room for farmland, towns, and roads. To make matters worse, severe, hard winter freezes swept through the valley in the 1950s and 1960s, completely killing off thousands of acres of citrus trees. Suddenly, the white-winged dove had almost nowhere left to build a nest. Their population crashed hard, dropping from millions of birds down to just a few 100,000. Wildlife biologists worried that the grand white-winged dove tradition of Texas was going to disappear forever. That is where human determination, smart science, and the incredible adaptability of nature joined forces to save the day. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, alongside dedicated non-profit conservation groups and local landowners, stepped up to the plate. They began buying up patches of land in the Rio Grande Valley to create special wildlife management areas specifically dedicated to preserving and replanting native brush for dove nesting. But while humans were working hard to fix the habitat down south, the white-winged doves did something nobody expected. They adapted. Instead of staying trapped in the changing countryside of the valley, small groups of white-wings started flying north looking for new places to raise their chicks. They discovered that the giant planted live oak trees and pecan trees inside growing Texas cities and suburbs were perfect substitutes for the old citrus groves. In cities like San Antonio, Austin, San Angelo, and even up into Dallas and the Panhandle, city neighborhoods offered deep shade, zero hunting pressure, plenty of backyard bird feeders, and endless swimming pools for drinking water. The white wings moved into town, multiplied by the millions, and established massive urban populations. Today, white-winged doves are no longer just a South Texas specialty. They are spread across almost every single county in the Lone Star State, with a statewide population that tops over 6 million birds. Let's break down the technical strategies, land management choices, and conservation tips you can use to build a premier white-winged dove habitat on your property. My first big tip for you is to plant high-energy agricultural grain crops and manage broadleaf seed production. White-winged doves are heavy-bodied birds with massive appetites, and they require a lot of protein and carbohydrates to fuel their long flights and keep their strength up. While mourning doves prefer tiny native weed seeds, white-wings have bigger beaks and love larger grains. To attract and support white-winged flocks, plant fields of grain, sorghum, milo, sunflowers, corn, and sesame. The key to making these crop fields usable for white-wings is timing your harvest or shredding routine for late summer. White-wings like to feed in massive groups, so knock down strips of your grain fields to scatter the heavy seeds directly onto bare, open dirt where hundreds of birds can land at once and feed without getting tangled in tall weeds. My second tip is to provide protected water stations featuring broad, clear bank access. Because white-winged doves eat a dense diet of dry grains and seeds, they must drink fresh water twice a day, usually once in the mid-morning and again during the late afternoon right before they head to roost. White-wings are very cautious drinkers because their large bodies make them a bit slower to take off if a predator attacks. They will avoid small, muddy puddles that are choked with tall weeds or surrounded by thick brush where coyotes or bobcats can hide. To build the ultimate white-wing water hole, maintain a clean dirt stock tank or build an elevated concrete water trough that sits in an open area. Keep the ground around the water source completely bare, smooth, and sandy for at least 15 feet in every direction. This open design gives the doves a clear, unobstructed view of the surrounding pasture, allowing them to drink safely in large, relaxed flocks. My third tip is to manage and preserve tall, dense roosting cover and nesting trees on your land. White-winged doves are highly social roosters that prefer sleeping and nesting together in high, sturdy trees that offer deep canopy protection from hot sun, heavy rain, and climbing predators. On rural ranches, preserve natural stands of mature live oaks, giant cottonwoods, hackberry, and thick mesquite mottes along creek draws and river bottoms. Avoid overclearing or topping large oak trees near your pastures, because those high, thick branches serve as the primary staging areas where white wings gather in the evening before dropping down into the fields. If you are managing a smaller country property or homestead, planting rows of fast-growing shade trees like live oaks or cedar elms will create a long-term nesting nursery that white-winged families will return to year after year. My fourth tip is to actively support statewide banding programs and non-toxic shot standards. Conservation is an ongoing process that requires constant data. Every summer, game wardens and biologists place tiny, numbered bands on thousands of white-winged doves across Texas. If you ever harvest a white-wing or find a banded bird, Always take 2 minutes to report that band number on the official federal website. Reporting your bands tells scientists how far white wings migrate, how long they live, and how urban populations interact with rural wild flocks, directly helping biologists set fair, sustainable season dates and bag limits. Additionally, practice good land ethics by using non-toxic steel, bismuth, or tungsten shot if you can when hunting near water holes or agricultural feeding fields. Keeping lead out of the soil prevents feeding doves and other wildlife from accidentally ingesting spent pellets, keeping the ground clean and healthy for all species. Understanding the story of the white-winged dove and taking active steps to manage their habitat is one of the most rewarding parts of being an outdoorsman in the Lone Star State. It shows us that nature is resilient, but it also reminds us that wild creatures depend on our thoughtful care, smart planning, and dedicated stewardship to thrive in a changing world. Preserving this grand tradition means looking at our rangelands, farms, and city backyards with a sense of duty, ensuring we leave plenty of wild spaces, clean water, and native cover for the next generation. Protecting the legacy means teaching our kids and grandkids how a bird that was once near crisis bounced back to fill our skies, showing them that true Texian conservation requires patience, hard work, and a deep respect for the land. When you step outside on a warm summer evening, hear that familiar "Who cooks for you?" call echoing from the oaks, and watch a heavy flock of white wings flash their bright white stripes against the sunset, you are looking at a living miracle of American wildlife management. Take pride in your land and protect the outdoor legacy of Texas. So what do you think of that? Are we right on target? Or did we totally miss the boat on that one? Email us at howdy@feedbandit.com and let us know either way. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear to show off your Texas First Outdoors pride. 10% of every purchase gets donated to Texas-focused outdoors causes. This way you can help preserve the tradition and protect the legacy of Texas. And remember, always support your local feed store. If you're there for them, they'll be there for you when you need them the most out in the field. Stand tall, fellow Texian. We'll talk soon.